Thanks, Miriam. And congratulations to Miriam Manuel on her nomination. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. I'd like to begin with a post that I saw earlier today. It was posted by Mr. Samuel Strawn. He's the independent candidate for the Mount Moriah constituency. It said, "Wise men plant trees under whose shade they may never sit." Mr. Speaker, you have planted a tree, and I will speak more to that throughout my presentation. Today, the theme, Mr. Speaker, is thumbs up, thumbs in, and we shall win. Dangling the carrot season, Mr. Speaker, part 5. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, members of the House of Assembly, and good afternoon to Centerville. The good people of Centerville, all the people of Centerville, and good afternoon to the entire Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the people are ready to vote. Thumbs up, thumbs in, and we shall win. I attribute that slogan to my former campaign manager, who is now the campaign president. Her name is Tara Ticey Umbrister. I will speak to your decision, Mr. Speaker, to resign from the Free National Movement, done through God throughout this presentation. So whether the government can do something about it or not is not the issue. It should be embraced, Mr. Speaker, by both parties. And any party that does not embrace an independent Speaker of this House is not serious about the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the independent position is what it should have been in the first place. God is good, Mr. Speaker, and he's always on time. So let me give that thumbs up award to my Lord and Savior, who says he will never leave us or forsake us. To Centerville, I want to say stay encouraged. Check out our Facebook page on updates as we have around the constituency, as we move around the constituency. This is a good day for Centerville. This is a good day for the Bahamas. This is a good day for the Bahamian people. We now have an independent Speaker of this House of Assembly, and we have an independent chairman of our Boundaries Commission. I don't even know if Sir Lyndon envisioned that, but thumbs up, thumbs in, and we, the people of this Bahamas, will win. We will continue, Mr. Speaker, with our community education campaign in Centerville, continuing to educate our people on the Parliament, the politics, and on what it really means to be independent. Our food network, Mr. Speaker, continues, and our rental assistance program, in as much as we can, continue. We must fight, Mr. Speaker, to get our children back in the classrooms. Our Lent program, which begins next week, Ash Wednesday, February 17th, where Centerville will have its prayer breakfast once a week, and we visit our basketball courts, Mr. Speaker, spreading the good news, not of politics, but of Jesus Christ and his forever saving grace. Mr. Speaker, one may look at others and think that, they're talking a lot about prayer and God. But we do not know the cost of the oil in our people's alabaster box. You don't know what our people, or you may not know what our people in Centerville are going through just to get food or even a place to stay. We don't know, some of us, what we have to go through just to find a job or even to take care of our children, our babies. Mr. Speaker, we may not know, you may not know what we go through just for a change of clothes or just for a little respect. So when something good happens for Centerville, and when something good happens like what happened today, an independent speaker of our house, don't touch that, because you don't know the cost of the oil in Centerville's alabaster box. So today, Mr. Speaker, before I begin on the appeal, the amendment, many have asked about your resignation and what I felt about it and what I felt about an independent speaker. And I reserved comments for today. Speaker, knowing you, I know you know this isn't about you. It's bigger than you, Mr. Speaker. It's bigger than this Parliament. The audacity, Mr. Speaker, to believe in something greater than ourselves. 2 weeks before our historic election win in Centerville, my sister made shirts for Centerville that said, "Watch history." And it was done. We have made history today, Mr. Speaker. The people of Nassau Village have made history. They have sent to Parliament, through God, the first independent speaker that I know of or remember in almost 50 years. And the first ever that I know of independent chairman of our Boundaries Commission. This is monumental to me, Mr. Speaker. This is personal. A parliament of substance, Mr. Speaker. Now the world can begin to take us seriously. You have earlier today, just one day in your office and in your seat, overthrown a ruling of the last former speaker. That ruling, Mr. Speaker, played a big role in why I left the Public Accounts Committee in the first place. That ruling, Mr. Speaker, by the former speaker, in my opinion, strangled accountability. It placed, Mr. Speaker, the needs of transparency and freedom of information on the necks of the Bahamian people. Kudos to God through you, Mr. Speaker. The people will not be distracted. I don't care what political narratives you put out there. I don't care what the editors say. I don't care what anyone says or does. We will still, in the spirit, understanding that this independent position is bigger. It's a bigger picture than you, than me, than us, than this Parliament. The audacity, Mr. Speaker, to believe in something greater than ourselves. The people may not understand your decision, Mr. Speaker, but we will all feel it like I felt it this morning. I felt so excited and happy about coming to work. And it is a good thing. My children asked when I was dropping them to school why I was so happy today, why I was smiling in the car, and they just had to ask. And I said to them, the Speaker of our House of Parliament is independent. You no longer have to go to an MP for a job. You no longer have to go to your MP to get a house, kids. You no longer have to go to your MP for food or social services. You no longer have to vote for a party just because of what you think they can do for you. You can vote with your own independent mind, Yulia, Rhett, and Starlet, for what you think is best for our people and for our country. So thumbs up to you, thumbs in, and we shall win. I am sure my kids didn't quite get it. Like maybe some of us in here, maybe many of us out there. But God is at work, Mr. Speaker. And farther along, we will all understand why. Being independent, Mr. Speaker, doesn't mean that one is independent of collective responsibility or of governance, because we all must work together in separateness of duty and of power to make the Bahamas what it ought to be. The humanity of the independent, Mr. Speaker, speaks to people first and then collective responsibility. We govern for the people, by the people, and with the people. We believe in democracy, not dictatorship. We do not believe in exploiting, Mr. Speaker, the majority for the minority. That's just not what an independent thinker believes. Thumbs up, thumbs in, and the Bahamian people shall win. Mr. Speaker, to be independent, and I'm going to just bring this home to Centerville for a minute, is to be a single mother in Centerville who says she just won't give up until her children are fed and properly educated. To be independent, Mr. Speaker, is to be a righteous leader who does not fear democracy, but challenges his subordinates to be the best they can, to maximize their potential. To be independent, Mr. Speaker, is to be a talk show host, a journalist who educates and inspires others to live a life of knowledge and truth, notwithstanding political marketing. To be independent, Mr. Speaker, is that young father in Centerville who would do anything for his children. But he couldn't. But he still voted what was in the best interest of his children. To be independent, Mr. Speaker, is to believe, the audacity, Mr. Speaker, to believe in something greater than ourselves. To believe in God, not man, and to believe in people, not party. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to the bill. I just thought it was very important for us to have, for me to have that, for Centerville to have that communication on independence, because I cannot even begin to tell you how much I appreciate an independent speaker and how much Centerville appreciates an independent boundary commission. We've come a long, long way. Mr. Speaker, I heard the member who would have moved the motion, and he spoke to judicial independence. And he said that judicial independence was a state of mind, and I could appreciate that. I appreciate, though, Mr. Speaker, that justice is what justice does. Mr. Speaker, Sir Burton Hall, a man that I admire, and his ruling on the untraceable ballot. I even think the parliamentary commissioner was somewhere in that ruling. But this is the jurisprudence that we need in our country. The juris independence that we need, independent of thought, independent of interpretation, independent of politics. Yes, I do agree that we do need some remediation of the deficiencies in the registrar of the Supreme Court. And yes, the assistant, Centerville, supports the request or the bill for the assistant. However, Mr. Speaker, just want to touch on one aspect of that, because over the Christmas holidays, the newspapers were inundated with gazetting of the quieting of title. Inundated over a holiday time when you are expected to respond to a quieting application by way of the Supreme Court registry, because you have to go to the registry to review it to make sure there's no conflict. After going there, I went myself, and of course sending many others. There's absolutely nothing there to support a quieting of title. Mr. Speaker, I would have bought this, I would have given notice of the Select Committee of the Quieting Titles Act. And like I said last week, everyone knows this is not about the average Bahamian quieting land or getting land. This is about the abuse or the miseducation of a law that has disenfranchised so many of us. And so I do look forward to bringing that motion for the investigation of the Quieting Titles Act. Hopefully it leads to some amendments and it leads to proper administration of the act through the registrar of the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, I was very proud today because it was questions and answers day. And that's the second Wednesday in every month. At the very least, we got the day to be recognized, and we support that. It's democracy. The people of Centerville supports that. We had a few questions on the marijuana policy or pension for persons or even jobs in our constituency. We had questions about our children and the educational system and when and how will we get them back into the schools. So, Mr. Speaker, on a final note, Centerville supports this bill. Centerville supports an independent Speaker of this House. Centerville supports an independent chairman of the Boundaries Commission. Mr. Speaker, Centerville supports where we are today in our parliamentary history. So thumbs up, thumbs in, and the Bahamian people and Centerville will win. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for the Exumas on Ragged Island.
Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island once more to speak on their behalf. This bill today is non-controversial. We support the separation of powers for the judiciary. We support providing proper resources for the judiciary, and we support this bill. And we will vote for it. Mr. Speaker, today has been a powerful day in this Parliament. I congratulate you, first of all, on your independence. I congratulate you on your ruling, which returns the power to the Public Accounts Committee. And by doing so, return the power to the people. The chairman of the PAC, our honorable leader, has advised that meetings will resume as early as next week so that we can continue our work unimpeded. That's the intention of the PAC, to move swiftly to look at matters that might become before us. Mr. Speaker, transparency and accountability have been soapbox issues for this government. By not allowing the opposition today to have its question time, It has been most hypocritical. And these actions define this administration's real view on the issue of transparency and accountability. And it's most regrettable. In relation to justice in Exuma, Mr. Speaker, I call on the government to cause a new magistrate to be posted in Exuma without delay. Justice delayed is justice denied. Residents are complaining daily about not having a magistrate in Exuma to hold court. We are aware that other circuit courts have had circuit magistrates hold court since the pandemic, in particular in Bimini and Eleuthera. I'm advised that Exuma is the busiest circuit court in the Bahamas.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael on a point of order.
Speaker, the member for Exuma would not want to go where he's going. We have an independent judiciary. We have magistrates who are assigned by the Chief Justice. We ought not to be saying that the government assigns magistrates. That doesn't happen. So it's important for us not to. I believe the member would be able to get more direction and guidance if he were to write to Chief Justice. But to stand here and imply that the government determines where a magistrate is assigned is not something that he would want to say. And I'd be most grateful if he would refrain from doing that. I know that he doesn't know, but they are signed within judiciary, and the government would not have control over the assignment of magistrates.
Speaker, I'm aware. I'm grateful for the guidance of the senior member for Carmichael. And this is why I've indicated that I asked for the government to join voices with me in encouraging this to happen. Mr. Speaker, Exuma is the busiest circuit magistrate court in the Bahamas, circuit court in the Bahamas. I'm advised that there are significant amount of matters pending. I'm advised that there are scores of civil and domestic matters pending, and people are being disadvantaged, and justice is being denied. I call on the powers that be to act, as justice delayed is justice denied. I will take the advice of the member for Carmichael, and I will write formally to the Chief Justice on this matter, as it is a very pressing concern for the people of Exuma. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, I pointed out that in relation to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, that the government broke the law. This government seemed to have a pattern of saying one thing and doing something else. We cannot listen to what they say. We must watch carefully what they do. They behave as if one set of rules apply to them and one set of rules apply to everyone else. They sometimes behave as if they are above the law. They like buzzwords like transparency and accountability, but in their actions, they are blatantly hypocritical. The Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018, in Section 10.2, mandates that the fiscal strategy report be presented no later than the third Wednesday in November 2020. They presented it during December. They broke the law then. Then, Mr. Speaker, the same Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018 in Section 10.4 mandates that the fiscal strategy report be debated by the 31st of January It is now February 10th. Not one peep from the other side as to when this debate is going to happen. They knowingly and blatantly break the law again. Today, I was pleased to hear of the new compendium of financial bills, financial management and procurement bills, and the new statistics bill. We continue to bring laws, but I urge this government not to bring laws that they're not prepared to follow. There are some lingering concerns in relation to the emergency orders and as it relates to Exuma. I won't be very long. I just have a few critical points that I need to raise today. I call on the Minister of Health to examine the science and the guidelines that continue to cause Exuma to be under the same restrictions as last year when it was deemed a hotspot. The situation has changed, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
For example,
Honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member from Bamboo Town on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want it to be left on the record that the member for Zuma is accusing this government of breaking the law. You know, Mr. Speaker, under the Emergency Powers Act, the competent authority has the authority to move certain requirements in there.
you better consult
Mr.
Michael.
Speaker.
He's a good lawyer.
And Mr. Speaker, I consulted with the, Mr. Speaker, the reality is the government will debate fiscal responsibility act requirements in the fiscal responsibility report that was to be laid in November. We did lay it in December. It is our intention during the midterm budget debate which must be done by the end of this month, that report will be debated along with the government's direction in regards to its midterm budget as to what we intend to do.
I'm a little confused as to what the member's point was. But Section 10.4 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act mandates that the Parliament shall debate the fiscal responsibility report and shall inform the minister no later than the 31st day of January of any recommendations on the fiscal strategy report. That don't sound debatable to me. I'm no QC. I'm no lawyer either. But I understand what the word shall mean, Mr. Speaker. And the government has broken the law as it relates to the Fiscal Responsibility Act. There is a remaining concern as it relates to the emergency order. And I call on the Minister of Health to examine the science, to examine the guidelines that continue to cause Exuma to be classified as a hotspot, perhaps, because the same restrictions apply as applied when it was considered to be a hotspot. I call on the minister to review these restrictions. For example, parents and teachers in Exuma are eager to begin face-to-face learning, but is prohibited from doing so. It is time for all of the restrictions as it relates to Exuma to be reviewed and to be harmonized with other low-risk islands. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we welcome the opening of a passport office in Exuma. I've been consistently agitating for this in public and private on behalf of the people of Exuma for the last 4 years, and I am grateful that it's finally happening. Over the years, Exumians have faced great difficulty and expense in traveling to Nassau to obtain passports and other basic documents. It is hoped, Mr. Speaker, it is hoped that this will allow for further convenience for our growing population in Exuma. Our vision for a digitized Bahamas is that this service will not only be available for Exuma and the Providence, but will be accessible online for Bahamians everywhere. I will be in my constituency on Friday, and I intend to welcome the member for North Abaco and attend the unveiling of this office on behalf of the people of Exuma. Mr. Speaker, I said finally, but there is one more disturbing matter. As I drove in today, I noticed a large labor-related demonstration going on in Rawson Square, as has become the norm, it seems. Last week, nurses. This week, taxi drivers. And given the state of labor relations in the country, I wonder who will be next week. I call on this government to put their shoulder to the wheel. Respect the labor movement. Demonstrate more care and attention and compassion to the complaint of our stakeholders, the workers across our country, and make haste in resolving the pending issues. The nurses, the doctors, the taxi, myriad of these caring professionals find themselves having to demonstrate in the sun to get the attention of the other side. And I'm very concerned. I read today in one of the dailies that the Minister of Labor was proclaiming that unemployment is drastically down and most people are back to work. How delusional. It's not supported by science. It's not supported by statistics. It's not supported by the reality on the ground. Happy talk isn't going to fix the unemployment problem in our country. We have to put our shoulders to the wheel. Happy talk is not going to fix the issues of labor relations, the angst, the anxiety, and the problems that our people face who demonstrate week after week here in Rawson Square. So I urge you to be honest about the state of play in our economy. Be honest about the state of affairs as it relates to unemployment. Be honest about the plight of the unemployed, the hungry, the poor, and the suffering. When you make cavalier statements like unemployment drastically down, the thousands of people who are unemployed, who sit at home, who read this nonsense, are greatly offended by it. So stop the happy talk and get to work. Mr. Speaker, I'm always grateful to speak on behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island. I've made a commitment to continue to serve them with diligence now and in the future. When I began this journey of national service, we rolled out eVision 2030, our blueprint for unlocking the potential of Exuma and Ragged Island. Not eVision 2017, not eVision 2022, eVision 2030. Because we recognize the need for a long-term plan. I wish to ensure the people of Exuma and Ragged Island that I will continue to represent their interests with integrity and continue to advocate on their behalf. Empowerment, leadership, integrity, and results will continue to be our watchword. On behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island, I rest, Mr. Speaker. May God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angaston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of Angaston to make a very brief intervention because there were a couple of matters I wanted to put on the record that are of pressing concern to the people that I represent, and I guess the Bahamians in general. But as I approached the House this morning, I was interested to see the huge force of armed police officers outside of this, the People's House. And it brought me back to pre-2017, when the member for Kalani and other members of the Free National Movement were out there with the V March and talked about, this is the People's House, and look at the police. And here we are, just a couple of years later, and it's almost as if we have come full circle. And outside, you had taxi drivers. These are middle-class Bahamians, or ought to be, because of self-employed businessmen and women who were outside demonstrating. And the show of force of police officers was just something to, it was just startling. And it reminded me of the talks of Kalani before the election. And I think the member for Cat Island and Rumkey and San Salvador was making this point earlier about the talk and the actions. As was stated earlier, the agenda anticipates that on this Wednesday there would be question time. It happens all the time in parliaments globally, all over the world, in the Westminster system. You see in the British Parliament, questions are asked, the elected government members are accountable, and the beat goes on. But what we saw in this parliament was an effort to defeat and thwart that process, which raised the question, because, you know, if you had an urgent agenda, then we would say, okay, we understand. But we're debating really an administrative bill where they're trying to increase the number of assistant registrars for the Court of Appeal, which is non-controversial, agreed by all of us. But the critical aspect of today's agenda, which was the question time, was derailed so that we could do this bill that's non-controversial and agreed across the board. And really, it's clear, in my view, that this government today demonstrated an intent to avoid accountability in this parliament. So I want the Bahamian people to take away those two messages. The police that were out there in huge numbers armed, and those taxi drivers, men and women, who have not worked in so long, they're saying that it took them so long before they were included in the employment assistance program, who are really the mainstay in terms of our tourism product. They're what we call the ambassadors, as was said earlier, who are out there frustrated because they're saying they're not treated with respect by the department that governs them, and who are also querying a process where they were promised in the general elections. Before the general elections, I think it's even in the platform of the Free National Movement, where they were going to issue these plates, where they saying there has been some issuances, and what they said over there, that it was being selectively distributed to individuals on criteria that was not transparent. And they were concerned about that. And then, of course, we had the demonstration in this parliament where we not only did we have to go into a vote, we went into a division because this government did not want to subject itself to answering questions by the official opposition on matters that affect the people of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I think the member for Yamacross alluded to our Constitution and the importance of democracy. And you know, I'm one of those. I always see democracy differently for people like who have history similar to ours than perhaps others, and maybe others have a similar rationalization. But I know for people in this region, democracy was a foreign, alien concept, and the history is one of violence, oppression, abuse, rape, pillage. So democracy has a meaning for us that it probably does not have in such a compelling way for others. That is why we should value it. We should cherish it. We should uphold it. We should respect the right of privacy, the right of liberty, the right to your personal property, to your home, the right not to be arbitrarily detained, the right not to be arbitrarily deprived of your life. All of these things are incredibly important tenets of how we view our experience and how we wish to move forward as a people. But what I would humbly submit that what we saw this morning was not reflective of that. But we do know that elections are coming, even though two things. One, the Prime Minister or this administration promised that they would bring legislation limiting the terms of a Prime Minister, and secondly, creating a fixed date for general elections in this country. But we have this added component now where we're being told we ain't going into election. So on the one hand, you say you're going to give this transparent reality for the Bahamian people, which has not come. But on the other hand, you're now sending us down the road saying ain't no election, when everything on the table say election coming. Every single thing, but you're telling us with a straight face, ain't no election coming. That raises serious questions about the dialogue this government is having with the Bahamian people. I want to assure the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker, election coming. It's coming. Don't worry about what you hear. Don't worry about what your trusted Prime Minister tells you. It's coming, Mr. Speaker. It's coming. It's imminent. So we're going to spend the whole day in here now debating this bill, but you find that a lot of us are debating other matters because we've been frustrated by the process in this parliament, which is designed to curtail and to somewhat silence the voice of those in opposition in this country. And we want an opposition. You don't want to have everybody on the same page all the time. That's la la la. You have to have tensions, the yin and yang of life. It makes you better. It makes you better. So when you want to run away from that, it makes me wonder about your deficiencies, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, the member for Exuma, Ragged Island, talked about the Minister of Labor, who said, the headline said, I must admit, I didn't read the story, but I'm sure my trusted brother read the story. But the headline itself, if it reflected the story, it said that unemployment had been drastically reduced. And I just want to say that I want to see if I can sensitize members of this House. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of them are young people. And not only are they demoralized, they're now moving into a state of desperation. And even access to food now is becoming a situation. I don't know if any of you are seeing it, or maybe the world that you swirl in is a bit different than the one that I swirl in, but there's a high level of hardship in this country. A lot of people are out of work. I have been in this house talking about a particular individual for rent assistance. He has been waiting now for 8 months for rent assistance. And you know what he told me to say in this house? He said he has supported this administration since he first voted. He's 18 years of age. And since he was 18. I wouldn't tell you what he say after that because he needs his rent assistance and I don't want no one to get in the middle of that. Nothing to get in the middle of that. He's disappointed. And I have raised it in this parliament over and over, and he's not gotten assistance. I got a call on Sunday from a woman with a newborn baby, a 1-month-old baby, and an older woman, where they have been evicted, and she told me they were going on the park. I say this because to try and sensitize us in this parliament that what is happening in this country is of a critical nature and of a crisis nature. It's access to food, it's access to shelter. People out of work, they don't have a dollar. And a lot of young people are being affected. Someone just messaged me today in this parliament for help with internet for their children, with the tablets, which that's another issue. You can't access schooling because you don't have internet service. And then, of course, the situation in Grand Bahama, I know we have a member here, but I don't know how people in Grand Bahama are making it. I honestly do not know. Because there's nothing happening in Grand Bahama. And all the grandiose promises of this administration have fallen flat long before COVID and long before Dorian, and it only made it flatter and flatter. You did not have a plan, but you had some words, but you did not have a real plan for Grand Bahamians, and you got 5 seats out of it. 5 seats. But and 2 senators? And a GG. But the people of Grand Bahama are suffering. So I say that to say that, some of the questions we would have brought to your, the other thing with this question time, it helps you too, because we're on the ground, we can raise issues, it help inform you if you're not informed, and help shape responses. But it seems as if we are in a reality where you're creating a narrative for the Bahamian people. We're not going into elections, but we are. Unemployment is going all the way down, but it's not. Things are getting better, but they're not. And so I think that you do yourself a disservice when you when you run away from the realities and the truth. Because at the end of the day, you're going to find you will have lost credibility so terribly. We could have helped you this morning. You could have answered because you look good. You could have looked really good answering. But instead, you ran away from it. You got the police out there. You say election ain't coming, and it's just one deception after another, after another, after another. And in the meantime, the Bahamian people are facing incredible hardship. What I love about Bahamian people, they're so intelligent. We go in huge numbers to vote, not because we ain't got nothing better to do. We are very involved and invested politically. Very few countries on this planet have the voter turnout of the Bahamian people. Highly intelligent, highly invested, highly involved. So when you engage in this type of thing that I've just described, you create a great deal of anger and frustration out there and animosity. And so, like I say, it might have been helpful to you if you had just looked accountable. Even if you really didn't mean it, it would have gone a long way this morning. But that's water under the bridge now. We saw this morning that this government went through extraordinary measures to avoid and making itself accessible to answering questions about social services, about the national security, about housing, about education. You didn't want to answer. You want to tell us a narrative. And Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people have to. I think they're gonna understand and know that when you hear politicians on the government side, politicians are politicians, but when you hear them, that you have to truly take it with a grain of salt, what it is you're hearing, because credibility has been eroded in such a serious way. And the Bahamian people know it, because like I said, they're intelligent, they're invested, they know it, and they love their country. So when they feel like it's not being well served, they get agitated. And I can tell you, I walk with there, plenty of agitation going on out there. If you haven't noticed, I know you're on the ground, I'm sure you're feeling some of it, the heat of the situation. The other thing I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, is that In recent times, there's been a spate of killings in this country, and some of which, from the details that I've heard, have been horrific, and I can't even understand the reasoning for it. I've also noticed an increase in knifings. And if you look at somewhere like the United Kingdom, they have a lot of knifings in that country. And I just want to raise it so that we have an understanding, or that we are more alert to a phenomenon that is happening in this country. It's not a recent one, it's a prolonged one. But there seems to be a sort of, I don't know, a descent in the nature of these killings and the reasonings for them, which is a matter of grave concern. And, I don't know the reasons for these things, but I'll say this, that it must cause us to pause. It must be cause for pause. What is it? What is the reason? What is the reason we are seeing this in the Bahamas along with everything else? Unless we just accept that we have a murder rate and it's going down 1% and we should be patting ourselves on the back. Otherwise, if you're not of that school of thought, then we have to be concerned as a peace-loving people who have tried to build a good country, why we are seeing the things that we are seeing. And I just believe that it requires a different approach to how we deal with violence in this country, including, I think the member for Yamacross spoke about offenses, sexual offenses, and exploitation of women. And I've talked about in this house before how we treat children in our juvenile court system. And I just want to say it again because I believe it, that we have to look at our law and how children and young people are treated before the law, in terms of interventions, in terms of sentencing, and in terms of detention. And I spoke last week about a very horrible experience I had of watching a young boy move through the system and onto the gallows. And so I just raised that again in here because while we are talking in here about bringing another assistant registrar for the Court of Appeal, that is fine. But all of this is supposed to be supplanted upon a justice system that not only deals with offenses, but at the same time assists in enhancing or advancing a nation. And it is in that context that I raised the issue of juvenile justice in this country. I've been talking about it for years, and I want to raise it again. And I'm looking forward to a government that will have the courage to address this issue of how children move through our criminal justice system. Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we support the legislation. We understand that it better equips our justice system or legal system in terms of how justice is meted out, or in terms of how disputes, civil and criminal litigation, constitutional matters, how all these matters are dealt with through our legal system. So we support it. But I think that what I am looking forward to seeing is an approach to our justice system that is an overhaul in terms of philosophically, jurisprudentially, how we see these things, including issues of domestic violence, including issues of juvenile violence, juvenile justice, and on, in a way in which we see ourselves as rehabilitating a people who have come from a difficult past. And so, Mr. Speaker, we support the legislation. We regret that it has come in a backdrop of what appears to be a disregard of the democracy in terms of how the opposition functions in a democratic nation. We see this as somewhat of a violation. And, this is something that is not new. Let me say it like that. It's not new. But I think that it is a wake-up call for us to have the guts to be able to take the democratic system by the horns and go with it, even though it doesn't go with your flow. That's how it is. This is not an easy thing. We tend to see politics as who you're cussing out, who thief, who this and who that. That's how we see politics. But politics is really about how you advance the democratic principles and how you advance a people and how you become accountable. And you build strength, you build muscles through that, and people respect you. But when you come and manipulate, when you try and manipulate, when you manipulate, they see through it. And they say, do you honestly think y'all could do another platform? Do you honestly think this administration can do another political platform that talks about these high ideals? Nobody can believe it. We don't see it, Speaker. And, like they say, election ain't coming, Speaker, but election coming, Speaker. Be ready. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity. I promise you, with that, I shall be brief. I stand on the shoulders of those who have gone ahead of me, and I'm thankful and I am grateful to the people of the great Golden Isles constituency. Mr. Speaker, of course, as has been stated, that we support the piece of legislation before us. But I would like to speak with your permission just to this day, what I think that what the day means for me. You see, Mr. Speaker, there are a number of things I can touch on, like the land grab going on in Golden Isles, like the need for more protectionism for Bahamians as we are being taken advantage of in our own country, and I intend to speak to that in much more detail in the future. Mr. Speaker, I can speak to the whole question of the issue of minimum wage. Everything is going up, but wages are the same or decreasing. Mr. Speaker, I can speak of the mental health challenges that have been overlooked since this pandemic. You see, it's not normal to restrict church attendance to 10 or 20. That's not normal. It's not normal to restrict persons to attend a funeral and only 20 persons. It's not normal to have a loved one in the hospital and you cannot visit them. And in most instances, cannot communicate with them. And then they die. And you cannot lay them to rest the way you normally do. That's totally abnormal. But it's becoming a norm in the pandemic. And it's causing mental health challenges. Mr. Speaker, I can also speak of the misery index. Said this, when you add the rate of inflation, and Senator and Exuma would know this better than I would, by combining the rate of inflation and the rate of employment. And the higher the index, the greater the misery felt by the average citizen. Mr. Speaker, what I wish to focus on today. We speak of the separation of the powers of the judiciary. But, Mr. Speaker, the various branches of government, it almost makes it hypocritical for us to be speaking of this separation and not speak of that separation. See, Mr. Speaker, as I understand it to be, and if I'm wrong, please, someone who is more learned than I am can correct me, that the House of Commons requires the Speaker to resign. As I said, if I'm wrong, correct me, maybe it's changed. And for the first time in our democracy in the modern Bahamas, of course, in 1967, majority rule is the Speaker who ran as an independent and won as an independent. and became a part of the coalition, short-lived coalition government. But this is the first time that a speaker has, for lack of a better word, seized his independence. This is an historic day. This, Mr. Speaker, is a great day for democracy. You see, the fact of the matter is, all of us, adults, is that a speaker who's owned by a party in the chair, as much as he or she desires to be impartial, there will come a time when they will go with their prejudice. They will be loyal to their party. That's human. That's expected, even understood. Virtually every speaker, with the exception of one or two, in an independent Bahamas, has suffered through the embarrassment, maybe even the indignity of having the opposition party move a vote of no confidence against them. This happened. Now, Mr. Speaker is in a better position to advocate for the independence of the parliament, which is paramount in the Westminster model. You see, we need to mature, and if we're going to follow the Westminster model, let's not be selective in following the Westminster model. If we're going to follow the model, let's follow the model. Mr. Speaker, the only government institution that's older than the parliament in our country, and arguably so, is the office of the Governor General that was foreshadowed by the royal governors. See, Mr. Speaker, the Parliament of the Bahamas is almost 292 years old. The executive branch is about 50 years old. If I'm wrong again, my figures, correct me. It's the Parliament that gives birth to the executive, and the executive gives birth to the judiciary. The executive branch is free, the judiciary branch is free, but the parliament is still being strangled. But yet we meet today to discuss the separation of powers within the judiciary. I see it as a mockery. Just me, Mr. Speaker. Of all the branches of government, the parliament is the only branch of government where every citizen has a voice through their representative. You see, Mr. Speaker, in the executive branch, the cabinet, they meet in secret. The judiciary branch, the judges deliberate in secret. But, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable House of Assembly, the Parliament, we not only speak publicly, but, Mr. Speaker, it's televised, it's broadcast nationally and internationally for all whosoever will to see and to hear. So it's very public. The Parliament, from which I'm told is the French word, the Parlement. If I didn't get my French correctly, forgive me, I didn't take French like the member from Engliston. And I didn't take it, so she could. Yeah, parler, see? Okay. Which says it's an active French word that means speaking, to speak, to speak. And that's what we do here. It is done publicly that the people would see, the people would hear, the people would know what their representatives are saying, are doing on their behalf. And so, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you, I wish to congratulate you. I wish to further to what was done with regards to the Public Accounts Committee. And just to let you know that it's resonating in the public, that they're appreciative of it, and they see it as a sign of a revival of democracy. So in spite of what they were saying before, Mr. Speaker, okay, so Mr. Speaker, the steps taken, in my opinion, is to advance democracy, advance accountability, advance transparency, all the hallmarks of the Westminster model, and it means good, better governance. Interestingly enough, I hope we get there as a democracy one day, an our democracy, in the House of Commons under the Westminster system, which is to be a system of honor. When the general elections are called, the honorable members honor the solemn and the time-honored tradition not to contest the seat held by the Speaker. The Speaker remains until he either resigns, he becomes permanently incapacitated, or he transitions, he moves from time to eternity. You'll always be reelected. Will our democracy ever get there one day? I hope so. And I think as we mature, as we grow mature and develop as a people, I think we will get there. But today, as I started out saying, Mr. Speaker, it's a great day in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It's a great day in our parliament. It's an historic day, and it's a great day for democracy. And I believe this will all help to enhance our democracy and facilitate good governance in our Commonwealth. And so, Mr. Speaker, having said that, the Almighty God, Yahweh Elohim, continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and make the wealth more common. And I say it with a sense of exuberance, Mr. Speaker, long live the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Democracy is alive and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to wrap up debate on the bill before us of a inclusion, an amendment to the Court of Appeal Act. And also I stand on the great people of the constituency of St. Anne's, who I've had the pleasure to represent until the end of my term, whenever that may be. Mr. Speaker, some 25 years ago, 26 years ago, I was first appointed sworn in as Attorney General for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I don't see any others Attorney Generals in the members of the House. At that time, I'm going to take, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, to go back a little bit in history and see what has changed in the court system, lest we forget. One of my first challenges was getting the office early, and I can't remember which year it was probably 95, 96. Those of you on the criminal side of the bench will remember. And I had to stand by the phone waiting on the Privy Council of England to call, and this very British voice came and said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, yes, whatever. And he was calling to say that the Privy Council in England had upheld the appellant's requirement not to be executed that day. This was something about 2 minutes to 8 in the morning. And I had to quickly phone Fox Hill, Her Majesty's prison, where executions were there before carried out, and actually stop the execution, which would have been the last execution in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We've come a long way. He then asked me, just on an amusing aside, he asked me, he said, could I put my instructions in writing? I said, you recognize my voice? He said, yes, Attorney General, I recognize your voice, but I need those instructions in writing. And I'm going like, uh-oh, I got 2 minutes to go and I got to find a fax machine, because before these things. And the fax machine in those days for ministers was locked up in the PS's room. It wasn't in the minister's room. So, I mean, fortunately, he took my word for it. And probably about 9:30 when the secretary came in, I was able to dictate a missive, and the person was spared the gallows. We haven't had a hanging since. We've come a long way. Let me go into a few other things. When I was there for a while, and one of the things I did, the word nolly, right? I think we all know that lovely word nolly. One of the things I did in we had a solicitor general there, sent me boxes and boxes and boxes of files. I must have nullied thousands of cases when I was AG. Someone stole a candy bar 5 years ago. You know, how are you going to bring them before the court? You know, a tourist caught with a joint in some nightclub. When he was 17, and now he would have been 27. You go find him in the United States, bring him back here. So we had a system where thousands of persons got their cases nollied. Now this government is talking about expunging of records. How far we have come. Mr. Speaker, we didn't have a court of appeal. We talk about a court of appeal bill. The court of appeal didn't sit, if I'm correct, in the Bahamas. You had to go to the Chief Justice, lawyers will correct me if I'm wrong, as the ex officio member of the Court of Appeal to get leave to appeal, and then there was a court that circulated that came here. We now have a sitting Court of Appeal, fully complemented with justices of the Court of Appeal. The Privy Council, that was a place 5,000 miles away in London, England. The Privy Council now come in December, I'm not sure when they came last, and they sit in the courts in the Bahamas and hear people's appeals to the Privy Council, the highest court on our land. That is how far we have come. You can also check, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if I'm maybe correct. This present administration has spent millions of dollars renovating the Garnet-Lavarity complex in Grand Bahama. We have had a new standalone industrial tribunal. There's a magistrates court, I think West End can help me. There's a magistrates court being built in West End, Grand Bahama. 8 Mile Rock, sorry. We have increased the numbers of justices sitting. We've come to this parliament, increased the number of justices. We have created a standalone juvenile court for the hearing of juvenile matters, so they don't have the indignity of having to come before the Court of Appeal. More importantly, we sat in this parliament and introduced the independent director of public prosecutions, so that therefore there could be no going by kisses and favors who got prosecuted and who didn't. And we now have an independent public prosecution. And as I said, we have agreed to expunge records of persons, which means a lot, because a person at 17 or 18 gets himself in a little bit of, or herself in a little bit of trouble. She shouldn't have that on her record for the rest of life. So there have been improvements in the judicial system in the Commonwealth of Bahamas. We've moved the Office of the Attorney General. For those who, some of you served in the Attorney General's office when it was in the post office, the elevator sometimes didn't work, the water didn't work. You had no protection in terms of anyone could walk off the street, etc. They're now in a new building out on John F. Kennedy Drive, named in honor of the former Attorney General, Paul Adley. You know, it just by way of an aside, of the former and current Attorney Generals, only 2 were not made silk. Only 2. Tennyson Wells, may he rest in peace, and myself. I wouldn't have accepted it, so I'm not looking for anything. But it's interesting, in our whole history, no, absolutely no. Only 2 weren't made silk. And that was a process, again, started by the former Member of Parliament for North Africa, the Right Honourable Hubert Ingram. He reintroduced the appointment of silk. We had a long time when QCs were not appointed. A long time. All of this goes to show in the last 25 years the increase or the deepening of democracy, of the law, in the Bahamas and bringing it closer to the people, to us Bahamians, being able to access the court far quicker and far cheaper. Yes, a lot more needs to be done. I remember when I first went to the Attorney General's office, they had introduced the first court management system of tracking of cases. I nicknamed it the gold-plated computer because we had some technical problems of uploading files and everything. But we've come a long way in terms of case management, where you don't have to go to the court. You sit before the judge, and there's some attempts at settling. There's also plea bargaining as another example. We can look at the progress that has been made in the last 25 years in the court system and look, by way of comparison, as to who was responsible for the majority of that work. And lo and behold, you'll find the majority of the advancement in the legal system of this country came under an FNM government. The other side will be quick to stand up and say swift justice and everything else. Give them that. I'm not too sure it was swift. But to this day, we still have probably 30,000 summonses and some of the outstanding waiting to be served. So every day I come to work, the policemen are on some corner booking people for not having whatever. Yeah, we should find a way to nully the majority of those that are small offenses. Just wipe them right off and get back to business. Because otherwise the court will never catch up. Because I think we did a study, there has been a study done. I think you will find there are some people in correctional facility that will have been there by the time they have their hearing heard longer than the sentence that can be imposed. I may stand corrected on that, but the criminal lawyers can probably check that out. So we have to find a way of getting this, whilst improvements have been made in the physical structure, in actually increasing the number of courts, the number of judges, and here we have we're making an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal, which shows the work that is now going through to the Court of Appeal from the many judges here. The other day, and the minister who succeeded me, the honorable member for Yamakro, a very capable member, Minister of Financial Services, and the Prime Minister attended an arbitration symposium, Zoom, or whatever it was, where they talked about the Arbitration Act or bill that is before Parliament and hopefully will be passed soon. And that'll be another improvement in the legal system in the Bahamas, where we can use going to arbitration. One thing that irks me, and it still continues to irk me, is that lengthy arbitration with regard to Bahamar was actually carried out in the state of New York. Contracts made in the Bahamas for the development of things in the Bahamas should be subject to the laws of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, so this addition to the Court of Appeal Act, and if you actually look at the Court of Appeal Act, the requirements for deputy registrar and the requirements for the assistant registrar form pretty well the same requirements. So as we said earlier, there should have been no disagreement as to what we're doing here. The budget provisions, it'll speed up the process of the court. I just forgot to mention in the last 25 years, court reporting, where you now have video courts, you have the stenographers, and a number of those issues. When I first became a Attorney General, one of the outstanding issues was the stenographers hadn't been paid for years. So we talk about people not getting paid. It's not new. The stenographers weren't paid by the former administration, and we had to sort that out. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I'd like to support and wrap up the debate to that extent on the Court of Appeal bill. Before doing so, though, I'll ask your indulgence to refer to some of the other issues. I think the debate was, this is a great day because the Public Accounts Committee has finally taken back its power. But let's look at who imposed that bottleneck or that strangle neck. Whose government it was then and who's objecting today. Same people, different sides of the fence. Same people. I was a member of the PAC. I stood right here and objected to that ruling by Mr. Major. Sorry, the Honorable Speaker, Dr. Major. And I was told in no uncertain terms where to put myself. Two members of that side still sit in this house. So it was okay for them for 4 years. But it's not okay now. I just raised that because the honorable member, one person said it was a grain of salt, and people will remember that, and everything else like that. Well, people will remember because we remind them that it happened then. So when you complain about it now, make rules that you can live with when you're not over there. It's very simple. One of my mentors said that very clearly. Make sure you make rules when you're over there that you can live with when you're over here. That was the PAC. That was the PAC. The other question, which was very amusing, was question time. I don't think we got question time once when there was only 8 of us over here, and all of them were over there. There used to be a guy sitting here who had a rod of connection, big styrofoam stick, and he used to hit Ingram over the head all the time with it. And everyone over there was laughing when we were asking for question time. But now, oh, that's wrong. Make sure you live with over here, put rules in place when you're over there that you can live with when you are here. So those 2 issues made me smile. Made me smile this morning because not only that, if you look at if the House goes and produces the agenda just before the dissolution of Parliament, when the Right Honourable Perry Christie lost his seat, there was over 200 questions or 100 and something questions on the agenda that they hadn't answered for years. For years. So let's just don't make rules over there and then talk about transparency, accountability. No, Mr. Speaker. No, Mr. Speaker. And also to talk about those things. I know someone won't like what I'm saying today. They'll jump up a bit in the next setting and say, and then taxi plates. This issue of taxi plates has been going on for years. And then saying now that kisses go by favors as to who gets plates. Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, the chair recognizes Honourable Member Frankston on a point of order.
The member is saying that this has been going on for years. The moratorium was lifted twice. Under the FNM, when they first served, and it was secretly done, and no one knew it was happening. I raised it in this Parliament. The then minister was sat right here in this House. And it's been lifted again on the second time under this administration. So nothing has been going on for years. It's happened twice under the Free National Movement. I understand the political points St. Anne's wants to make, but make sure it's accurate. Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I think that the member misled also on the Swift Justice Program. He dismissed it as some sort of flimsy thing. But I want to, and these are my notes I'm referring to. This is a speech, I made notes based on a speech that the Attorney General, this one right here, gave in Switzerland, where he spoke about the Swift Justice Program. He described it as being effective. And then he advised that in 2015, 232 criminal matters were disposed of before the Supreme Court, which was 114 more cases in 2012. He informed that the time for presentation of voluntary bills of indictment decreased from 344 days in 2012 to 68 days in 2016. He further advised that since 2013, the Office of the Attorney General has made more progress on tackling the backlog of criminal cases than at any time in the last 2 decades. Now, these were his words, not mine. Okay, and he also said that 10 criminal courts operating in the Bahamas Supreme Court were created. This represents an increase from 6 courts in operation in 2013. And he spoke about the fact that all courts were outfitted with internet and video conference capacity to promote access to justice. And he said that this meant that witnesses outside the jurisdiction or in one of our family islands can now routinely give evidence by video conference. And then he spoke to the fact that the Office of the Public Defender was created. The member has misrepresented the work that came under that initiative, Speaker.
Speaker, I acknowledge that the Office of the Attorney General, Department of Public Prosecutions was created. I'm not disagreeing with the honourable member said. Swift Justice has had its. Yes. I said, when you listen to, so you do not mislead this House, I said, the member for St. Anne's, that I acknowledged that the Department of Public Prosecution had been established. I also said that someone would probably stand up, and Swift Justice was one of your programs. I gave that too. So therefore, we accept that. We accept that. Now, I do not accept your issue of taxis, because my issue was the moratorium. You might be quite right on. I'm not disagreeing on that. But taxi plates, issuance of plates, I stand by those comments. So I stand by that comment. But
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleston.
Thank you, Speaker. The PLP administration, there was a lifting of moratorium for one person, Mr. Sandstone, because his plate was taken. That was during that whole bloody political exercise when people's plates were taken under the prior Ingram administration. Other than that, the moratorium was never lifted. No plates were issued. I saw cases where plates were issued in the face of moratorium under the FNM administration. And we do know they lifted it twice, one time secretly, and the second time the people out there are talking about it. They're saying it went to, in their words, friends, family, and lovers. That's what they say. I don't know. I'm sure the government would not do business in that way. But that is what they're saying. Their complaint is that you've lifted a moratorium and the manner in which plates are being distributed is not transparent.
Mr. Speaker, if you look at the list of those persons who hold taxi plates today, I rest my case. And it'll say what it says and how it says it. But I will add this bit, that successive governments have been toying with this issue of taxi plates for far too long. It is time to bring closure to that whole issue. And I think both sides are on agreement with that. And the sooner, the better. Man, all them PPPs that were signed on the 7th of May, all them PPPs signed on the 7th of May for millions of dollars that happened secretly, that weren't even drawn up in the office of the Attorney General. So let's not go there. Let's not go there. And that's why the government have bought successive bills like procurement and the fiscal responsibility. So you cannot execute agreements within a certain period before an election. And you can check who brought those and who tabled the bills this morning. So whilst, I'm not running again, so don't bother me. So when you say about don't do things at election time, let's make sure we put in place rules over there we're prepared to live with over here. With those few comments, Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to stand and close the debate and move the second reading of the amendment to. I close the debate and move the second reading and passing of the bill before us now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
Speaker.
Are you on a point of order? Because the member just closed.
The member misrepresented what the argument is on this side about the.
And that's the end of the debate.
Speaker, again, remember,
No.
misrepresented what
Honorable member. Honorable members. Speak to the chair. Honorable members, can you resume your seat? I am about to put the question. Honorable members, it has been moved. Honorable member, I'm putting the question. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes. As many members that are in favor, will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes.
For the second reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for.
I was listening to the member for Finance, who said that he was present in respect to the ruling of the Speaker on the issue of that he served on the PAC committee at the time. He wasn't here. The member was not in the chambers at that time. He said, you said you were present when the ruling was made, and that you made and you be over there, and that we didn't say anything about it.
You mean it's true?
Right? No, it's not true. He wasn't here. Hubert Chipman was Hubert Chipman was the member of Parliament for Finance, and in fact, it was as a result of his conduct that resulted in that ruling, and that is, Mr. Speaker, that a report had been leaked to the press, and the PAC committee sought to review, have a hearing on that report, and the simple ruling was that before they could do that, it had to be laid. That's the effect of his ruling. And so, Mr. Speaker, the member ought to revisit what he had to say about that question, because he wasn't. I didn't want to say that he may have been.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I was a member of that Public Accounts Committee. And so I don't want the member for Cat Island to try and to rewrite history. The fact of the matter is that the issue that was raised was a matter that dealt with, as he says, an unlaid document to which the Public Accounts Committee made a very credible case. I think it was with something to do with urban renewal, if I remember correctly, of which the member for Cat Island was the minister responsible for urban renewal. And it involved some serious allegations. The member and the government at the time made a very, very impassioned and adamant plea. And I listened to the member for St. Anne's speak about the defense that they put up. No, I can deal with you soon. I can deal with you soon. Because I saw your statement, which isn't, I was going to use a word that is not good. But you made a statement. You asked a very, very insulting question, not of me, but of the public servants who prepare the financial reports of this country. You didn't insult me. You insulted them, and I take that. I take that. So we can deal with that. We can deal with it. You want to go down that road? We can go down that road. See, because, you see, I didn't come here unarmed. You got plenty things to answer. You got plenty things to answer. Right? And so, if we can go down that road, we can go down that road. Or maybe I'm not supposed to be afraid. I'm not afraid. Because one thing is, the truth is the truth. And at the end of the day, it will be revealed. The point that I wanted to make, Mr. Speaker, at this time, is that the Speaker at the time, and the Speaker as such, has since, I believe, Mr. Speaker, spoken to you and acknowledged the mistake he made. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition has no standing, none, to be able to speak on this matter. None. And he should be ashamed of himself.
Honorable members, for the second reading in committee of bills, chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further second readings.
Committee of the whole House. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Well, Exum is a wise man, the chosen one, nowhere to be quiet. Mr. Speaker, I rise and move that the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole and that the Deputy Speaker assume the chair.
Is there a second? Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House dissolves itself into a committee of honorable members, the Committee of the Whole House, with the Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House and the Deputy Speaker in the chair. Honorable members, I'm trying to put the motion. Honorable members, as many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who are opposed will stand. I also now resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House in the chair.
Committee of the Whole. Chair recognizes the member for Yamakro.
I rise and move that the long title, a bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. Many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I rise and move that the short title of the act be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. Many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I rise and move that clauses 2, 3 to 5 be agreed.
Second. Being moved and seconded that clause 2 through 5 of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 2 through 5 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I rise and move that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
Second. Being moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise.
Okay.
The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Mr. Chairman, I rise and move that the Speaker now retake the chair.
It's been moved and seconded that the Speaker now do take the chair. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The Speaker will now take the chair.
That's quick work, Mr. Chairman. Quick work. Quick work. Exoma boy, man. Smart fellas. Yeah. Man, Peter, what that document that you got in your hand?
Speaker, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the bill, making no amendments thereto.
I never see
Honorable members,
so fast in all my life.
the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of Committee of the Whole House has reported that the Committee of the Whole House has gone through the bill, making no amendment thereto. Third reading and passing of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I move for third reading a bill for an act. I move for third reading a bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes.
Second.
Thank you. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. A bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the third time.
A bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act to provide for the appointment of an assistant registrar of the Court of Appeal and for connected purposes.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be declared to be the Court of Appeal Amendment Act 2021.
Wait till I see Santa Claus for the first time.
For the third reading and passing of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
No further third reading, Mr. Speaker.
Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and I do respectfully beg your indulgence, sir. As many of you would know, I am a member of the media, have been since 1974. And in my capacity, sometimes as a media supervisor, I have decried this representation of the consciousness of our people on the newspaper of record when we seem to highlight and celebrate the less than honorable aspects of our society. It's right here.
Honorable member, can you cite the source
This
of
is
the
the
date?
Tribune of February 9th, which was yesterday, sir. And it reflects the image of two individuals who are presumed to have committed acts in circumstances of what is described here as road rage. I've gone on record many times as being in dire opposition to such representation. It's not too difficult, Mr. Speaker, for the media to otherwise celebrate our young men. This is not difficult at all, sir. And the reason being, sir, is this young man, and I please apologize to him, who is a Karajaya Forbes Slagenhoff, who is an 18-year-old Bahamian, who is registered, born and raised in Grand Bahama, who is registered and enrolled in St. Leonard's boarding school in Scotland, and who was just elected the head boy in that school's 144-year history, the first black to have been done so. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, it was only 4 months ago that he so registered in that school, Slogan Hall. He also, Mr. Speaker, if you read his bio, which I will lay on the table of this House, was only 4 years old when he was put in foster home in Grand Bahama. He stayed there until he was 6 years of age. His mother died when he was 11, and he was adopted by a Mr. Beat Sloganhoff, a Swiss national, the same year that his mother died. Eventually, he became a youth parliamentarian that this honorable member can speak to, representing Angliston. He was of such an outstanding character, Mr. Speaker, that he was also chosen in 2019 for a Youth in Leadership Award. And during that time, he also received the Director's Cup Award, which is the third highest award a youth can receive in the Bahamas. I know it's easy to reflect some of the less than honorable circumstances of our society, but if there is anyone who should be highlighted on the pages, front pages of our media publications, I would like to believe it is this young man right here, sir. Mr. Speaker, may I also please extend my condolences to the Reverend Godfrey Bethel's family. He has passed. Mr. Bethel was, Reverend Bethel, as many of you know, was previously, before retirement, the pastor at Ebenezer Methodist Church on Shirley Street. He was before that a director of works. But more important, well, equally as importantly, sir, he was one of the facilitators in the establishment of the Youth Empowerment and Skills Training Institute and its boot camp, which was first conducted in James Siston, Eleuthera. And he was like our spiritual advisor. His daughter is a special education, what's her name? His daughter is a special education teacher at the Beacon School in, I think it's Grand Bahama. And of course, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, we want to extend to her family, his family, her family, and her siblings and others our heartfelt condolences and best regard for their moments of grief.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for the Exumas on Ragged Island.
Speaker, I neglected earlier to raise a concern of the people of Exuma as it relates to police certificates. I understand that they have been police records. Before time, we were able to get them printed at the police station in a matter of an hour or two, and now it's taking several weeks to be done. And I invite the minister responsible to look into this. It's becoming a grave inconvenience to the people of Exuma. Perhaps the member from North Abaco would undertake to look into this matter so that on his arrival, he might be able to provide some updates to the people of Exuma. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand. Collective responsibility. Yeah.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member
That you
for
come and bring the answer.
I just wanted to jump on that bandwagon there for South Beach on that very impressive young man. He's originally from Grand Bahama, but he is from Cordova Avenue, Angleton. I know him, the young man, I know him well, and his adopted mother. And he is an extremely precocious and very bright young man and out of the box. And I didn't know that he had attained such an impressive office in terms of head boy, but I'm not surprised because he has no boundaries in what he thinks he's able to achieve. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, I feel very proud of the many young people in Angleton who are, and the Minister of Education is here, who are doing so well internationally and in schools in the Angleton community and outside of the community. And it's always an inspiring thing to note. Speaker, I want to raise another issue. A lot of people are complaining about the process of transferring at the Parliamentary Registration Department. Someone told me this morning they had to do all kinds of gymnastics. They registered, but they came to transfer and to prove new residents. And I think the rules have to be clarified and consistent as to what is going to be required for people who want to transfer, who are registered voters, who voted in the last election, and who are now have moved into another area. The last thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I just got a note from one of my constituents, and they heard some of the debate in this parliament, and what they've asked me to communicate on their behalf, Mr. Speaker, is that they don't find it sufficient that we come in here and say, you do it, so you will say, we do it and you do it. They're not satisfied with that, Mr. Speaker. The people of Angleton, they want to, they can't, especially a government that came on some white, big horse. I don't want to say white because of stereotype, but this big horse of saying that with all that they represented, and then now saying, well, you do it, so what you talking about us doing it, you know, that type of dialogue is not, in my view, helpful, Speaker. We got to move beyond it as a people, whether we did it, whether you did it, whoever did it. You know. I did when I spoke. No, I did when I spoke. I said, this is not new. You didn't hear me? I acknowledged it. I acknowledged it. I said, I acknowledged this, Mr. Speaker. So the member should not say that I did not. I did say that this has a history. So the member would say, so Mr. Speaker, so I just want to say on their behalf, because what they're saying is they need jobs, they need help, they need to get out of this rut of suffering, and they're looking for some life of minimal decency to coexist with their children and a better life. That's what they were here in the parliament. Not we're the best because we did this. You know, people are not interested in that. It really, you know, the track record does not even matter that much, Speaker. What people are interested in right now, the people are interested. People of Angleton right now are interested in is how are you going to take me forward? How are you going to take me forward, Speaker? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Yeah,
for somebody to speak about the rules of the House. What we are witnessing, unfortunately, is an abuse of the House. Because, remember, I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the chair. Member statement is about member statement. It's not to reopen another debate. Be that as it is, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister would have laid a number of bills this morning that I think speaks to what the member is alluding to, moving on and making advances in this democracy and in the governance of our people. And I think the government deserves credit for bringing those landmark pieces of legislation. Exactly. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to piggyback on the member for Engliston with respect to the parliamentary registration. And the question that I wanted to ask, as you know, in Abaco, both in Abaco and in East Grand Bahama, but East Grand Bahama in particular, there's been tremendous dislocation as a result of the hurricane, homes being destroyed, and people having to live elsewhere temporarily, hopefully, while their homes are being rebuilt. As the member for St. Anne's just reminded, also, a lot of them would have lost their documentation, which is a particular challenge for a lot of the residents in these areas. I know the member the member responsible for the Parliamentary Commission is not here, but I think that is a question that is urgent. I did see a very informative video from the Parliamentary Commissioner today explaining that if you were on the register before and you have not moved, that you do not need to register again, you're automatically registered for the upcoming general election. But I think these particular classes of people need to be addressed specifically, because a lot of them still consider East Grand Bahama or Abaco to be their home. Yeah, and in Luzerne, in Exuma and in Luzerne, all over the place. They consider their domicile to be where they registered the last time, and that's their home. And so we need to know, Mr. Speaker, because we don't know when election is going to be called. And it may be within, they may not be able to get home within the 6-month window. And so they need to know whether there's any provisions for them, or whether they're going to have to register where they are now currently temporarily domiciled. It's an urgent question, and I do want to request that the minister responsible address that matter so that there's no ambiguity and people know exactly what it is they have to do, considering all of the implications of that. As I say, a lot of them having lost their documentation and may take some time to reestablish their bona fides in terms of being eligible to vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Just before I recognize the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama, for the information of members, I can assure you that that matter raised honorable members, Angliston and East Grand Bahama. This is for your benefit. Both of you raised this issue. The Constituencies Commission, in the most recent meeting, actually the last 2 meetings, discussed that very topic, particularly as it relates to the areas hit hard by Hurricane Dorian and the displacement of voters. We plan to meet with the Parliamentary Commissioner and his team very shortly, and we agree that it is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed, particularly with respect to the law as it relates to being ordinarily resident. And so that matter perhaps would be raised in an interim report so that it can be looked at by the appropriate authorities. And so we agree that it is urgent, particularly with respect to our work as the Constituencies Commission and our immediate or interim report with respect to that. Further member statement, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much. I rise on behalf of the people of Central Grand Bahama to offer sincere condolences to family of a very special member that we lost this morning, Ms. Idula Lang, to our daughter, Marge and Sally, and Ray and Lucian and the rest of the family. We obviously share condolences to you all and may God grant you comfort. Also to the Bethel family that was mentioned by the member for South Bay. I know Dr. Devil very well, worked together at Ministry of Works, his daughter worked with me at the Ministry of Works, his brother Chris, and worked also in the architecture and the built environment. Also to Ambassador Maurice Moss, who continues to recover. I want to say a special hello to him, and also to my mother, who's also recovering at home. Once again, happy Valentine's Day to all in Central Grand Bahama. May God keep you all safe in the hollow of the time. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to stand to offer condolences to all of the families in Centerville. We have suffered a lot of losses over the last few months, actually, and so I wanted to offer condolences to their families. We will be in the Hawkins Hill area this week, and I just wanted the community to know that the dumpster program continues as well as we move a dumpster around based on need. And so if you can, you should call the office and let us know so that we can get one there for you. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Centerville will be on the talk show Talking Heads tonight at 5:30 p.m. KISS 96.1 FM with Inigo and MJ Zanika Saleh, known as Naughty and Mary Jane. So we'll be discussing, of course, here the independence of the Speaker, the marijuana issue or policy, and of course, the natural resources and economic diversification. So we'd just like the community to listen up, and we will share as much as we can to educate the community. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Mango Key, South and Central Andrews.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I too would like to extend to the family of Pastor Shirley Johnson of High Rock, South Angeles, Zion Baptist Church there, really recovery. To her husband, Brother Charles of High Rock, and also a beloved daughter, Sister Melanie. And also want to say thanks to the member for Elizabeth, Dr. Dwayne Santos, who along with the medical staff at PMH, that have given some assistance to that family in much distress at this time. Also, we'd like to celebrate Brother Dave Nemore, civil engineer, now a poet and an artist, who recently published a book in what I call an artistic form, The Life and Legacy of the Great Joseph Spence, Beautiful Andros. I want to celebrate Brother Dave as one who is now joined what we call the orange economy, one that we see burgeoning in the communities of Andros, publishing and development, and also research, craft, and research development. I want to commend Dave Nemore for his work, and I wanted to know that we in the Androsian community and also by extension the Bahamas are glad that he would have done such great work. When I had a chance to visit first to the Smithsonian, we saw the work published in musical great history of one great Joseph Young E. Spencer to call him back in Andros. Also, Mr. Speaker, I also like to celebrate and also say thank you on behalf of the people of Mango Key South and Central Andros to the nursing staff in particular at the Mango Key Clinic. Nurse Edgecombe and also Andrea DeVoe and all the other ancillary staff members, all the nursing and medical staff there. Family Island nurses go through much, and also in South Andros, senior nurse Val Ramming and the doctor there and the administrative staff and all the nurses and ancillary workers, and also in Fresh Creek, Dr. Sean Thurston and also Nurse Edgecombe and their staff at the clinic in Fresh Creek. We don't thank them enough publicly. And many times these medical practitioners in the family islands are assailed and talked down to. And I want to let them know that I, on behalf of our people, thank them for their being very studious and sturdy and being committed amidst all of the challenges. And we've heard much about nurses over time and what have you. And the antigen staff that is needed in the family islands, I want to thank them publicly. And before I take my seat, we also like to also quickly note the fact that we want to make the process for persons who have transferred to these islands to be able to get registered for the next general elections very easily. Hopefully that we can see some initiative and some extra effort being given to this process when it commences. We're hearing a whole lot of talk and confusion about being involved in this process. It doesn't sound very hopeful at this time. Now people are somewhat concerned about it. Finally, on Saturday coming, we'll be celebrating the life of one Mr. Lacetus Joni Gibson, a nation and a community builder in the community of South Andros. I had a chance to join Administrator Francina Neely and others at the family stay just a few days ago. And this Saturday, we'll be at the historic Friendship Baptist Church there with the Gibson family in the Bluff. He is simply my God, I call him God brother, a loving man, always with a great smile and affable person. We'll be joining Administrator Jalita Ingram, Chief Counselor Zebedee Roll, and the other civic and religious leaders on Saturday coming for that farewell in South Andros. So the Gibson family, our thoughts and our prayers are with you, and may soul rest in eternal peace. And most profoundly, like we celebrated today, Mother Rosalita Davis, who is also passed from the South Andros community, who will be laid to rest on Friday. May they rise in glory. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamacraw.
Very much. I rise to extend condolences to the family of the late Mr. Jesse Dane. Speaker, Mr. Jesse Dane was a former air traffic controller who was incarcerated in the United States of America, and I worked very closely with his brother, former Royal Bahamas Defense Force officer. And we were excited to know that he was on his way home. And yes, ma'am. And he succumbed, he died. And there were some messages being sent to the family that raised some concern. And for all intents and purposes, he appeared to be healthy and excited about returning to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And unfortunately, he passed. And so I want to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the ambassador who's looking into this matter. Some of the family members intend to travel to the United States of America to also see how best this matter could be properly investigated. So I extend condolences on behalf of the Yamacraw family to the Dane family. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to extend condolences to Lyndon Roll, to the family of Lyndon Roll, who passed away. He's from the Elizabeth Estate section of Yamacraw. And then there's Mr. William Miller, and Pastor Roll, Pastor Godfrey Roll, who's a noted pastor in one of the churches in Yamacraw. He passed away. I had the opportunity to hear him preach on one occasion. But tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, we will lay to rest Miss Rosie Williams, and she is a stalwart in the Commonwealth Boulevard section of Yamacraw. And so I know my neighbor is not here, Dr. San. She lived on Commonwealth Boulevard. She's from Kid Island, Port Howe, Kid Island, and was, I suspected, one of my great supporters. She always came by to say hello. And so this evening we'll be having setting up for her, and then we'll also be attending church service on tomorrow. So may God continue to bless her family, and may her soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Falk Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to join my voice with that of South Beach in extending condolences to the Bethel family. Godfrey Bethel was a Methodist preacher. He served at Ebenezer Methodist Church, and during the time he was serving at Ebenezer Methodist Church on Shirley Street, his wife, Elmina Bethel, was serving at Polk Methodist Church in Foxville. The Bethels go back a long ways in Methodism, and so we extend condolences to his family. A lot of the Bethels are still there in Foxville. I spoke with his sister on Monday, and they are taking it really, really hard because it was totally unexpected. So he's done a good work on this side of the vineyard, and may his soul rest in perfect peace. I would also like to extend condolences to the family of Mr. John Morley. Mr. Morley was 90 plus, and he lived in Foxville. And we talked about taxi cab
placed in here today, in this place. You should know that Mr. Morley had one of the early tax reforms. I think his number might have been 181 or something like that, or close to that. And so he was a fixture in Falkville, and my condolences to his family. And we know that he lived a good life. I visited the family on Sunday, and they are grateful for his life as we are grateful for his life. I would also like to extend condolences to the family of the late Marjorie Demerit Knowles of Rose Street. Ms. Knowles is, Falkville, Mr. Speaker, is mixed up like tongue salad. We all connected to each other in some way. So with Ms. Margie Knowles, I would like to extend condolences to the whole family, but especially to my cousin Keisha. Keisha's father is my first cousin Peter, and so we are connected in those kinds of wonderful ways. And of course, to Diva and the head. And in terms of condolences, finally, I'd like to extend again condolences to the family of the late retired Superintendent Derek Butler. Superintendent Derek Butler was not from Falkville, but he was attached to the Falkville police station. He was in charge of that. He lived all the way in Bacardi Road. And even though he was retired, he was still concerned about Falkville and kept in touch. So for me, it was an honor to travel to the Southwest Cathedral off Carmichael Road to speak at his memorial service. He was somebody who cared about Falkville, who knew Falkville, knew the elderly people, he knew the young people. And so with policemen like him, the country would be in a good place. There are more like him, but I knew him personally, and even though he was gone, he was still there. So my condolences again to his family. And just to people in Falkville generally, I want to report that I met with some of the engineers at the Ministry of Work. We still have some flooding issues on Bernard Road where we've done the new paving, and we've got that in hand, and we would seek to have that resolved before the next rainy season. So we're working hard on that. And I'm really proud and pleased to say that the reflectors down the middle of Bernard Road, there, we have some more to go. But when you drive along Bernard Road, you feel like you're on an airplane runway. It is that nice. And so everything is for you to make our lives safer and to make our lives easier in Falkville. And also to let the people know in the Cannon John Q area that we've met with beaches, parks, and playground, and we're making some ways of getting those cattails out of the drainage pond there so that water can drain away a lot easier. So Falkville, we're getting things done for you. We're listening to the pastor this morning. Plans, ideas, plans, record. Let's work for the Bahamas. We're working for Falkville. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exumas on Ragged Island.
Speaker, I give notice of the following questions. Will the Minister of Finance please detail how much money has been spent to date on the purchase and operations and fulfillment of contracts associated with the government's purchase of the Grand Lucayan property in Grand Bahama? 2, will the Minister of Tourism please advise the status of the Grand Lucayan sale, when he expects it to close, and the terms under which the government is willing to close the sale of that property? 3, will the Prime Minister or the Minister of Tourism please update the House on the status of the bid by the Royal Caribbean to be granted or leased Crown land on Paradise Island? 4, will the Minister of Financial Services please detail how many companies have applied for and been given approval under the rules of the Commercial Enterprises Act? 5, will the Minister of Foreign Affairs please detail what strategy the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has developed to communicate with the European Parliament with regard to its position that the Bahamas should be blacklisted as what amounts to a tax haven? 6, will the Minister of Financial Services please detail what legislative strategy the Ministry of Financial Services has developed to deal with the European Parliament with regard to its position that the Bahamas should be blacklisted as what amounts to a tax haven. 7, will the Minister of Tourism and Aviation please detail which companies and or firms the government is considering entering into a PPP with for the airport on Exuma. 8, will the Minister of Health please release the relevant guidelines and science from which the Ministry of Health officials determined that Exuma should be under the same restrictions as last year when it was deemed a hotspot when it has only recorded a single case for the year, according to the COVID-19 daily data released by the Ministry of Health. 9, will the Minister of Finance please enumerate the amount of the drawdowns so far from the $250 million IMF loan facility entered into last year? 10, will the Minister of Finance please inform the House if the Tax Reform Committee has met as yet or been appointed, and who constitutes the membership of the committee? 11, will the Minister of Finance please advise when the mid-year budget containing supplementary appropriations will be tabled in the House for debate? 12, will the Minister of Education please advise when in-person schooling on Exuma will resume? 13, will the Minister of Works please advise whether the solar array constructed on Ragged Island is complete and delivering electricity to the people of Ragged Island? 14, will the Minister of Works please advise the House on the timelines for the completion of the school on Ragged Island? 15, will the Minister of Finance please advise the House on which projects have been expedited by the National Economic Council and any other government body or appointee as was promised by the Prime Minister and recommended by the Economic Recovery Committee? And 16, and finally, will the Prime Minister advise what penalty or consequences will be meted out to the Minister of Finance who knowingly caused the government to break the law, specifically as it relates to Section 10 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order that the notices be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table. Chair, for the notices, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Pine Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, notice that I wish to ask the following questions of the government. 1, can the government confirm that the owners of the Freeport Airport is Hutchison Whampoa, the same company that owns the Locaine Beach Hotel? 2, are the owners of the airport in Freeport also the owners of the Freeport Harbor facility? 3, are the owners legally obligated to maintain either of these facilities? 4, has the government inquired of the owners of the airport their intent in relation to the maintenance and or refurbishment of the airport? 5, if the government is seeking to purchase the Freeport Airport, what is the purchase price? 6, has the government solicited and or received offers from any private investors as to a joint purchase of the airport? 7, if so, who are these investors? 8, what role, if any, does the Grand Bahama Port Authority play in these negotiations? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the notice be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table. For the notices, the chair recognizes the honorable member from Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Speaker, just to say that all notices standing in the name of the opposition are renewed and remain. Thank you very much. Much obliged.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I renew all matters in the name of the government. Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 17th of February, 2021.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 17th of February, 2021. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 17th of February, 2021.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 17th of February, 2021. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to Wednesday, 10 a.m., the 17th of February, 2021.
All right.